These individuals are Katya, who is 14 years old, and Lena, who is 17 years old. They spent a total of 4 years in an underground bunker, enduring unimaginable suffering at the hands of Viktor Mokov. The discovery of a hidden bunker in western Russia left the police in shock. Inside, they found 2 young girls who had been confined underground for an extended period of time. The girls appeared utterly exhausted and aged beyond their years. To make matters worse, one of them was 8 months pregnant. Their physical condition was severely deteriorated due to the lack of sunlight and proper nutrition in the cramped bunker. Additionally, they were subjected to daily abuse by a man who used their bodies for his own pleasure. The torment they endured was nothing short of a living nightmare. When the girls were finally rescued from the bunker, it took them a while to comprehend that they were finally free. Once they regained their senses, they bravely shared their harrowing story. Years later, Katya Martinova, one of the girls, wrote a book detailing the horrific experiences they endured in the bunker. The contents of her book are so disturbing that they have the power to shock even the most hardened individuals. This tragic tale began in September 2000, when 14-year-old Katya Martinova innocently attended her first disco. She was a young girl who still played with dolls and led a typical life, growing up in the small city of Ryazan in western Russia. Her family was content and prosperous, unaware of any troubles. This blissful ignorance made Katya vulnerable to the existence of evil individuals who could inflict pain and suffering upon her. Despite her young age, Katya, like many teenagers, yearned to appear more mature. Thus, she eagerly accepted her friend's invitation to the disco. Lena Samokina, who was 17 years old, happened to be her sister's closest friend. They had planned to attend the disco together, but since her sister was absent, Katya made the decision to go in her place. She refrained from disclosing her exact destination to her parents. Instead, she simply mentioned that she was going for a leisurely stroll. The young schoolgirl was filled with excitement as she attended her first ever adult disco. However, when 10 p.m. struck, it was time for the girls to return home. During that era, mobile phones were not yet prevalent, making it impossible for the girls to inform their parents of their whereabouts or request a ride. Consequently, they had no choice but to rely on public transportation to make their way home. Unfortunately, boarding the city trolley bus proved to be a challenge due to the throngs of people also attempting to return after the festivities. In that moment, a car pulled up beside the girls. Inside were 2 men who kindly offered them a ride home. 17-year-old Lena agreed, eager to reach home swiftly. Katya, following her lead, made the same decision. Little did they know that this impulsive act would lead to dire consequences for both girls. They entered the car and provided their address, unaware that they would not be making it home that evening. From that moment on, their lives would never be the same. The driver, an elderly man named Viktor, remained mostly silent throughout the journey. Accompanying him was a young man named Losha, who introduced himself to the girls. The men suggested stopping by a store to purchase chocolates, engaging in light-hearted banter that did not raise any suspicions among the girls. The car came to a halt, and Losha entered the store to retrieve chocolates and a bottle of alcohol for the girls. They were offered a drink, to which they agreed. However, the 14-year-old Katya struggled after consuming alcohol for the first time, causing her to choke. Concerned for her well-being, she was given a bottle of water. The car resumed its journey, and it was at this moment that both Katya and Lena began to feel weak and fatigued. Suddenly, Viktor announced that he needed to visit his sister. The girls, lacking the strength to resist, were unable to object. It was only later that they would come to realize that the men had drugged their drinks with sleeping pills, enabling them to carry out their sinister plan. The car arrived at a dubious location, where Losha escorted the semi-conscious Katya out of the vehicle and into a garage. Then Viktor arrived at the location and demanded that she remove her clothing. The girl initially refused, but Viktor resorted to threatening her with the release of his dogs. Under the influence of drugs, Katya was unable to resist and reluctantly agreed. In a grimy garage, Victor became her first sexual partner on a filthy mattress. Following this, he coerced her into entering the basement where she discovered a cramped bunker. Initially, she believed that Victor would release her the next day and had no idea that this bunker would become her home for the next 4 years. Meanwhile, her friend Lena was sleeping peacefully, unaware that the same fate awaited her. Lena woke up the next morning, disoriented from sleeping pills, only to be brought to the bunker by Victor to reunite with her friend. Lena attempted to dress Katya in order to escape this horrific place, but Victor locked them inside, disregarding their pleas for help. The maniac periodically visited, providing them with minimal sustenance and making empty promises of their eventual release. However, as the days turned into years, they realized they were trapped in this nightmarish situation. For 14-year-old Katya and 17-year-old Lena, their lives descended into a living hell. Victor would summon them individually to another small room adjacent to the main one, where he would commit heinous acts on a red cotton blanket. Initially, the girls resisted, refusing to succumb to his demands. In response, Victor would cut off their access to light and threaten to block the ventilation, leaving them feeling as though they were buried alive. On another occasion, he brandished a knife and struck Lena with a hose, causing her distress. Witnessing her friend's suffering, he then took Katya to the next room, where he satisfied his desires on a red blanket. The girls were too weak to fight back, having recovered from the effects of sleeping pills only to be weakened by malnutrition and lack of oxygen in the underground confinement. Victor provided them with meager amounts of food and water, and the bunker lacked basic amenities such as sewage and running water. The young women were forced to utilize a small bucket as a makeshift toilet, which quickly became filled with waste. Lena and Katya endured the foul stench until Victor arrived to dispose of it. The girls spent days devising an escape plan, contemplating attacking him with the limited resources in the bunker. Victor provided them with only a dull knife, a boiler, and an electric stove for cooking. Despite planning to strike him with a hot frying pan, they realized their physical weakness compared to the powerful man. Fearful of his threats to cut off ventilation or fill the bunker with concrete, they complied with his demands on the red blanket to receive food and water. Victor visited them sporadically, demanding their bodies as if they were his possessions. The girls initially expected the other man from the car to join Victor, but it was only him. Eventually, they discovered that the young man, Losha, who had given them chocolate, was actually a woman named Yelena, Victor's accomplice. As time passed, the girls grew weaker due to lack of proper hygiene and inadequate water for cleaning. Their bodies and hair remained sticky and dirty, despite occasional provisions of new bed linen and clothing from Victor. After spending several months confined in the bunker, the girls completely lost their will to resist and abandoned any thoughts of escape. They understood that their efforts were futile, and their sole focus became survival, complying with the maniac's every whim. Victor, if one could even call him kind, started providing them with more new items. On New Year's, he brought them a bag of chocolates and various household necessities, such as a comb, hygiene products, and kitchen utensils. He even brought them playing cards. Additionally, he gifted Lena an English learning book and Katya a sketchbook with crayons. These items provided the girls with at least some form of diversion. Lena began studying English, while Katya indulged in her talent for drawing, adorning the bunker's dark and gloomy walls with vibrant and cheerful pictures. This creative outlet helped her maintain a glimmer of hope. One day, Victor brought them a stack of newspapers, and it was through these that they first learned about him. His name was Victor Mokov. But who was he? At the time of his crime, Victor was a 50-year-old man. He was born and raised in the small town of Skopino in western Russia. For most of his life, Victor worked as a skilled mechanic at a factory, earning a reputation as one of the best workers in his field. In his younger years, he appeared to be a decent individual. However, he struggled with social awkwardness and deep insecurities, which hindered his relationships with women. He married in his youth, but his wife left him after only 3 months for reasons unknown. From then on, he never formed any meaningful connections with women. The only person he truly loved was his mother, with whom he lived in a village house for the majority of their lives. She was a domineering figure who suppressed him in every possible way. It is likely that this oppressive environment contributed to Victor's descent into madness. Desperate to find companionship, he resorted to committing unspeakable acts, constructing a secret bunker and imprisoning innocent victims within. He meticulously planned this horrifying scheme over the course of many years, spending 3 years digging the bunker beneath his garage in his yard. The hidden bunker was expertly disguised, making it nearly impossible to locate. Situated 20 feet below ground level, it was sealed shut with a sturdy concrete door, rendering any cries for help futile. Victor had outfitted the bunker with all the essentials for the captive's survival, including electricity and ventilation. Inside there were 2 beds, a table, chairs, and dishes. Victor's first abduction occurred half a year prior to his assault on Lena and Katya, targeting another teenage girl who managed to escape without involving the authorities. As a result, the maniac became more cautious, reducing the chances of rescue for his subsequent victims. The initial months of captivity were harrowing for the girls, but their situation deteriorated further when 17-year-old Lena discovered she was pregnant. Despite Lena's pleas to be released, Victor refused, fearing legal consequences. Consequently, Lena endured childbirth in unsanitary conditions without medical assistance. Throughout her pregnancy, Victor continued to exploit her, showing no concern for her well-being. As the birth neared, he provided the girls with a textbook on gynecology and obstetrics, tasking 15-year-old Katya with assisting in the delivery using limited supplies. Against all odds, a healthy baby boy was born. However, Victor showed no interest in his son, focusing solely on his own desires. 2 weeks later, he demanded the child from the girls, but they refused, fearing for the baby's safety. The infant remained with them in the squalid bunker for nearly 2 months until one day they awoke to find him missing. It was revealed that Victor drugged their water with sleeping pills and abducted the child. Nevertheless, he ultimately saved the boy's life. The deranged man left the baby at the entrance of an apartment complex. Lena mourned the loss of her son, yet the infant brought a glimmer of hope in their confined space. She found solace in the fact that he was now free, exposed to daylight, and receiving proper nourishment. An underground bunker was no place for a baby. Subsequently, Lena became pregnant once more, and the cycle repeated itself. Katya assisted her friend in delivering the second baby boy. The child resided with them for 4 months before they decided to hand him over to Victor. The maniac abandoned the child in another residential building. Both boys eventually ended up in foster care, unaware of their true parentage. Perhaps it was for the best. Imagine the shock of discovering that your father was a maniac and your mother was his captive. Fortunately, Katya was unable to conceive due to her young age when she entered the bunker. In contrast, Lena, who was older, faced the burden of multiple pregnancies. After 2 births, she found herself pregnant for the 3rd time, a terrifying prospect. Exhausted and fearing for her life, Lena struggled through the ordeal. By this time, Victor was growing weary of his captives and sought a new victim. One day, he introduced a 3rd bed into the bunker and instructed the girls to set up a 2nd tier above one of the beds. Moreover, Victor's vigilance waned as he believed his 2 captives were completely subdued and would not dare to escape again. Consequently, he made the decision to escort Katya out of the bunker and bring her to the house for a shower. He then took her out once more and instructed her to assist in drugging the 3rd victim, a student who had moved into Victor's residence and rented a room. The maniac was convinced that she would be an ideal addition to his group of captives. The girls recognized this as their opportunity for freedom. When Victor brought Katya to meet the new girl, Katya had already managed to write a letter detailing their situation and pleading for help from the police. She discreetly placed the note among the girl's belongings. That day, Victor's plan to add a third victim to his collection was thwarted. Katya returned to the bunker, leaving her and Lena to anxiously await the outcome. Would the girl discover their message? Would she seek help from the authorities? Their entire future hinged on it. They could hardly believe it when one day they heard unfamiliar voices. A stranger peered into the bunker and inquired, "Girls, are you alive?" Katya and Lena were overjoyed. After years of captivity, they finally saw sunlight. The police officers who rescued them were taken aback by the girl's extremely pale and emaciated appearance. Lena, who was 8 months pregnant, found herself unable to move. Viktor Mokov, the perpetrator, was apprehended and given a 17-year prison sentence. Surprisingly, he expressed disbelief upon hearing his punishment, claiming innocence by stating that he had provided for and cared for his captives. This deranged individual lacked any sense of guilt and firmly believed that his actions were justified. Meanwhile, his accomplice, Yelena, who disguised herself as a man to aid in luring girls into their trap, received a 5-year prison term. Viktor Mokov's mother, who resided with him during this time, maintained her ignorance regarding the presence of the captives in the bunker. However, one wonders if she truly had no suspicions, considering her son's frequent trips to the bunker with supplies. Although it is likely that she had some inkling of the truth, her guilt could not be proven, allowing her to remain free. As for the fate of the girls, after enduring 4 years of torment, Lena Samokina gave birth to her third child, but what became of the child remains unknown. Some sources claim that the baby died, while others suggest that Lena abandoned the child. It is worth noting that Lena never attempted to reclaim the 2 boys she had given birth to while in captivity. Perhaps this decision was for the best, and it is not our place to pass judgment. Presently, one of these children is 20 years old, while the other is 22, and they likely have no knowledge of their true parentage. Surviving the years of horror with the maniac was an arduous task for Lena. She made the choice to bury the past and refuse to engage with the media. It is known that she pursued a career as an English teacher and opted not to have any more children. On the other hand, Katya Martinova, who found herself trapped in the bunker at the age of 14, managed to continue her education. She discovered the strength to move forward and even regained her trust in men. Katya has given birth to 2 children, a daughter and a son. Presently, she is happily married and willingly shares her tragic experience in interviews with journalists. Katya Martinova, the author of the book Confession of a Dungeon Prisoner, aims to provide moral support to women who have endured violence. She is an extraordinary woman who managed to survive the horrors she faced while still holding on to her belief in goodness. Despite enduring years of imprisonment, she has remained a compassionate individual. Today, she dedicates herself to assisting victims of violence. Although she may occasionally experience a negative mood, reflecting on her time in the bunker reminds her that her current problems are insignificant. She encourages people to cherish life, freedom, and moments of happiness. Remarkably, despite enduring absolute hell, she did not succumb to despair and continued to live. I believe there is much to be learned from this remarkable woman. Katya is now 37 years old, while Lena is 40. They have attempted to forget their traumatic experience. However, they were forced to confront it once again when Viktor Mokov, their tormentor, was released from prison in 2021 after serving 17 years in prison. He even granted interviews to journalists. It is undeniable that he is a completely immoral individual who fails to comprehend his guilt. He has never expressed remorse for his actions. During the interviews, he even made jokes about wanting to engage with one of the girls again to assist her in giving birth. When looking into his shameless eyes, it is challenging to believe that he possesses any trace of humanity. Do you believe he deserves to be free? In In 1986, the discovery of Ruby Doss's strangled body in Spokane's East Sprague area of Washington presented investigators with a perplexing cold case that seemed likely to remain unresolved. Over time, the parallels between her case and a series of other unsolved homicides led to numerous fruitless leads and dead ends, suggesting that justice for Ruby might never be served. However, a breakthrough in an unrelated crime unexpectedly shed new light on the case, reinvigorating the pursuit of her perpetrator. Ruby Doss, a 27-year-old resident of Spokane, Washington, had relocated from Detroit in search of new opportunities and a fresh start. Prior to the crime that would claim her life, Ruby faced various personal challenges, including financial difficulties. To support herself, she worked as an escort, a profession that increased her vulnerability in an already dangerous world. Despite these challenges, Ruby remained optimistic and resilient, striving to build a better future for herself and her children. Tragically, those aspirations would never be realized. On the rainy evening of January 30th, 1986, Ruby Doss's life was tragically cut short. She was last seen in Spokane's East Sprague area, a neighborhood notorious for its high crime rates and transient population. As the night progressed, the weather grew colder and wetter, adding to the desolation of the evening. Ruby's final hours remain unclear, but it is known that her body was discovered in a secluded and dimly lit field near the intersection of Fisk and Ferry. The discovery of Ruby Doss's lifeless body was made by a transient individual who stumbled upon the scene. The evidence unequivocally indicated that Ruby had been strangled, and the brutality of the crime was starkly evident from the violent signs present at the scene. Her body was found in a state that unmistakably suggested a fierce and intense struggle had taken place. Upon arriving at the scene, police officers observed Ruby's body bearing unmistakable signs of severe trauma. The investigation promptly focused on the details surrounding her slaying, including the identification of potential witnesses and the meticulous collection of evidence from the crime scene, which included fingerprints and DNA, although the forensic technology available at the time was limited in its capabilities. Initial interviews with potential witnesses and those familiar with Ruby did not yield any substantial leads, leaving investigators searching for answers and grappling with the complexities of the case. As the investigation progressed, detectives noted troubling and striking similarities between Ruby's case and a series of other unsolved slayings in the Spokane area, which suggested a possible pattern and raised concerns about a potential serial offender. Over the course of several months in 1986, multiple women, including Marianne Turner and Dorothy E. Burdett, were found strangled under circumstances that suggested a possible connection. Marianne, a convicted sex worker, was found strangled next to a garage on South Ivory in early November, while Dorothy E. Burdett, a 62-year-old woman with no known criminal background, was discovered in Highbridge Park on Christmas Day. The striking similarities in the method used to take their lives, particularly the use of strangulation, led investigators to consider the possibility that a single perpetrator could be responsible for all these cases, and raised concerns about a potential serial killer operating in the area. Despite the intriguing connections between Ruby's case and other unsolved slayings, the investigation encountered significant hurdles. The challenging circumstances of that fateful night, coupled with the scarcity of evidence and lack of immediate witnesses, presented substantial obstacles to the investigation. The forensic evidence collected was limited in scope, and the technology available at the time did not permit comprehensive DNA analysis or provide definitive links between the cases. Investigators explored various theories, including the possibility of a serial perpetrator operating in the region, but were unable to find conclusive evidence to tie the cases together. As a result, Ruby's case gradually grew cold due to the lack of significant progress and new leads, and the investigation continued sporadically, with each passing year diminishing the chances of solving the case. However, a breakthrough in Ruby Dawes's case emerged more than 3 decades after her brutal slaying, stemming from a seemingly unrelated investigation in a different state. By 2015, groundbreaking advancements in forensic technology had revolutionized the way law enforcement could analyze and match DNA evidence, providing new hope for cold cases. In a separate case, Richard Aguirre, a former police officer from Pasco, Washington, in his late 50s, was under investigation for an assault in Franklin County. During this investigation, Aguirre's DNA was collected and entered into the National DNA Database, Combined DNA Index System, a development that would ultimately prove crucial in reinvigorating Ruby's case. In a remarkable turn of events, Aguirre's DNA profile was cross-referenced with DNA evidence collected from Ruby's crime scene, yielding a pivotal match. This breakthrough was made possible by advancements in DNA technology and the entry of evidence into the database, which had not been feasible at the time of the original investigation. The connection between Aguirre and Ruby's case was solidified when Spokane police obtained a search warrant for Aguirre's home, collecting new evidence including items that could potentially link him to the crime. The renewed scrutiny and comparison of evidence confirmed Aguirre as the prime suspect in Ruby's case. This discovery was a game-changer, not only identifying the man responsible for Ruby's death, but also rekindling hope for the families of other victims whose cases had remained unsolved. After nearly 3 decades, Aguirre was arrested in June 2015 for his involvement in Ruby Dawes's murder, marking a major breakthrough for the Spokane police, who had long sought justice for Ruby and her family. Aguirre's trial began with intense scrutiny and high public interest, with the prosecution presenting a compelling case highlighting the DNA evidence linking Aguirre to the crime scene. However, the trial was not without complications, as the defense raised questions about the reliability of the DNA evidence and the possibility of alternative suspects. The defense mounted a robust challenge, arguing that Aguirre was absent from Spokane at the time of the slaying, supported by his military records. They also highlighted the presence of additional DNA evidence at the scene, suggesting the possibility of multiple potential suspects. Moreover, the defense emphasized Aguirre's distinguished career as a police officer and his subsequent life, arguing that these factors should be taken into account in his defense. However, the trial took an unexpected turn when the jury was unable to reach a unanimous verdict, resulting in a mistrial. Undeterred, the prosecution retried Aguirre's case in 2023, at which point he opted to waive his right to a jury trial, instead choosing a bench trial presided over by Spokane County Superior Court Judge Jeremy Schmidt. This strategic decision ultimately led to Aguirre's conviction for first-degree murder on December 26, 2023. The verdict brought a measure of closure to Ruby Dawes's family, who had endured years of uncertainty and anguish. On March 5, 2024, Richard Aguirre was sentenced to 25 years in prison, marking a significant milestone in the pursuit of justice for Ruby's tragic death. Judge Schmidt's sentence acknowledged the heinous nature of the crime and the lasting impact on Ruby's family, recognizing that no punishment could fully compensate for the void left by her loss. Aguirre's defense attorney advocated for a reduced sentence, highlighting Aguirre's youth at the time of the crime and his subsequent contributions to society. They also raised concerns about the potential vulnerabilities Aguirre would face in prison due to his background as a former law enforcement officer. Ultimately, the judge imposed the maximum allowable sentence under the 1986 laws. The sentencing brought a bittersweet sense of closure to Ruby Dawes's case, providing a measure of justice and resolution for her family, while acknowledging that it could not undo the past or fully heal the wounds left by her tragedy. Lashunda Doss Walker, Ruby's eldest daughter, poignantly stated, "I'm unsure if he grasps the extent of his impact. he erased a part of our lives, forever altering the trajectory of mine and my sister's lives. Latoya Doss, another daughter, added, "This loss extends beyond me. It's a generational loss, affecting my future family members." Burt Allen Mann's ordinary Thursday afternoon turned deadly on May 12, 1994, when he walked into his Austin, Texas home and was ambushed by an attacker. The brutal stabbing resulted in his tragic death on the kitchen floor, with multiple wounds indicating a violent struggle. The forced entry through a rear sliding glass door and signs of a fierce confrontation near the front door suggested that Mann had interrupted a robbery, leading to a fatal attack. However, despite the seemingly clear motive and sequence of events, investigators were left without concrete leads to pursue a suspect, leaving the case shrouded in uncertainty and raising questions about the identity and whereabouts of the perpetrator. The crime scene yielded a significant amount of blood, indicating that the perpetrator had also suffered injuries during the violent struggle with Burt Mann. Although DNA technology was emerging in 1994, it was not yet advanced enough to swiftly crack the case. Over the years, investigators pursued up to 40 leads, but none resulted in a confirmed prime suspect. The case remained unsolved until 2005, when cold case detectives re-examined a bloodstain from the scene and created a unique DNA profile of an unidentified male. This profile was entered into the combined DNA index system, but unfortunately, no match was found, leaving the investigation at a standstill. However, in March 2023, the profile was submitted to Bodhi Technology, a specialized company that utilizes forensic genetic genealogy to aid law enforcement in identifying potential suspects through familial DNA connections, offering new hope for resolving the case. In a remarkably swift breakthrough, Bode Technology identified a single potential suspect just 3 months after receiving the DNA sample in June 2023. Typically, such identifications can take several months or even years. With the suspect identified, police secured a search warrant to obtain a direct DNA sample from Kenneth Robbins, the identified individual, to compare it to the DNA evidence found at Burt Mann's crime scene. On September 8, 2023, the police collected Robbins' DNA sample. Robbins, a long-haul trucker, became the focus of concern when his employer contacted the police on September 13th, just 5 days after providing the DNA sample. The employer reported that Robbins' work vehicle had been stationary at a truck stop for an unusual amount of time, and he was unresponsive to phone calls and text messages, prompting worries about his well-being. In a stunning turn of events, police discovered Kenneth Robbins, the prime suspect in Burt Mann's murder, dead in his truck at the truck stop, having taken his own life just days after providing a DNA sample to the authorities. On February 8, 2024, the Austin Police Department officially confirmed that the DNA evidence found at the crime scene matched Kenneth Robbins, placing him at the scene of the fatal struggle. This confirmation came months after Detective Joseph Jedinak received a call from the trucking company's owners on September 13th, reporting that Robbins' truck had been stationary for an unusual amount of time, sparking concerns about his whereabouts and ultimately leading to the discovery of his body. The discovery of Kenneth Robbins' body occurred at a truck stop in Weatherford, Texas, after Detective Jedinak requested a welfare check from the local police department. Upon investigation, they found Robbins deceased inside his truck's cab. The evidence confirmed that Kenneth Wayne Robbins, an Austin resident, was the perpetrator who burglarized Burt Allen Mann's home and fatally attacked him. Following the autopsy, it was determined that Robbins had indeed taken his own life. With the suspect deceased, further investigation into the motivations and circumstances surrounding Burt Mann's murder is no longer possible, leaving some questions unanswered. The case, now closed, brings a sense of closure to the family, but the exact reasons behind Robin's actions may forever remain unknown.